Karen Reed are now asking for some charges against her to be dismissed. The judge declared a mistrial last week after the jury could not reach a verdict on whether Reed rammed her police officer boyfriend with her SUV and left him to die. Now her defense team says trying Reed again on 2 of the charges could constitute double jeopardy.
What? Oh, my God!
ABC's Ariel Reshef has the latest on that story.
Another twist in the closely watched murder case of Karen Reed, days after a deadlocked Boston area jury prompted the judge to declare a mistrial.
Folks, your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial.
Now, Reed's defense attorneys filing a motion to dismiss 2 of the 3 charges against her, claiming they were contacted by one of those jurors and sources familiar with the jury who said all 12 jurors had agreed unanimously that Reed was not guilty of second-degree murder and leaving the scene of an accident with injury or death. But those verdicts were never read in court. Reed's legal team writing, Juror A was emphatic that count 1, second-degree murder, was off the table. Adding, had the court so inquired, it appears clear that not guilty verdicts would have been recorded for count 1 and count 3. Miss Reed was denied her right to receive those verdicts in her favor, arguing trying her again on those same counts would constitute double jeopardy. Her team saying anything less than the dismissal of those 2 charges would be a travesty of justice. The Norfolk District Attorney's Office saying it is examining the motion in anticipation of filing a response, indicating it will press on with a new trial.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? So glad to be back. I've been on jury duty. Now I can finally talk a little bit about it. I was on a criminal trial. You know, it's kind of funny because of all the jokes I made on the show. How fast would I be kicked off out of the jury pool? 3 seconds, 2 seconds. I was the only one picked in my group of 50 to be on the jury. I was the jury. I was the last juror picked. And it was a trial having to do with some of the worst crime or the worst crime against children. And luckily for me, the jury, when we came back to deliberate, it was 11-1, and meaning 11 guilty, 1 not guilty. Well, not me. I was in the majority opinion, and it was a pretty fascinating experience. And the one juror who felt not guilty really didn't have any good reasons. And of course, wrongful convictions came up. And there was this feeling and talk, are we wrongfully going to convict this guy? And it was also pretty funny in that, and I will get to Karen Reed. I really did come to talk about Karen Reed. But it was funny in that I was talking so much about how everything is evidence, how when people come to the stand to give their testimony, that is all evidence. And that was really hammered home to us jurors because in cases like this that happen behind closed doors, that are by design, done by design, have no witnesses, you just have, two people's word and some other we had expert witnesses and other things, but not a lot of, no physical evidence. And could we accept that? So there was talk of that. There was talk about wrongful convictions and we don't want to wrongful convictions happen. So they have really, this wrongful conviction movement is so rich, has really brainwashed the public into believing, even when it's 11-1, first vote out. And so we worked on this story for about 4.5 hours. She really didn't have any good reasons, and she misunderstood a lot of what was said in testimony. I think my view was that she came on the jury with this idea that she liked the defense, that she didn't believe in punishing people, and she wasn't going to vote guilty no matter what. Luckily, she changed her mind, but that's where I've been. So Karen Reed, really wanted to talk to you about Karen Reed and not my whole jury experience, but thank you for listening. My Karen Reed has her lawyers have filed a ridiculous filing. If you saw in the opening, they are saying that her rights have been violated, particularly her Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, and 14th Amendment rights have been violated because the jury was unanimous on 2 charges, says their sources. And I think Kate from Masshole Troll Mafia channel said it best on Twitter. Let me share her tweet with you. She's getting really wise to these lying lawyers and the way these innocence fraud lawyers work and how much they lie. And I know I've seen different people from different channels and different viewpoints say, oh, one juror has come forward, it's this, until I don't know when I'm going to believe what the jury vote was or how they were ever hung in this trial. But I'm certainly not going to believe it out of the mouth of Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, who've been caught in so many lies. I think that the Free Karen readers are still waiting. I still get comments every day pretty much that the feds are coming in any minute and going to bust this case wide open in its ongoing investigation and blah, 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 blah. They're really set up for being disappointed. And no matter how much they see how different the evidence really was in the case and how much evidence the state had and how much good evidence they had, I don't know if they're ever going to believe. They've been so brainwashed by this innocence fraud campaign. But Kate writes, I thought this was really succinct and well put. Reminder, the last time Karen Reed's scummy defense team filed a motion claiming that they had an informant, it was Steve Scanlon, who angrily denied everything they claimed he said and threatened to sue a magazine for reporting any of it. They lie in court a lot, especially when they're running a Hail Mary attempts to dismiss charges or need more money from gullible half-wits like the Free Karen Reed cult. So yeah, they always need more money. Always need more money. These innocence fraud campaigns. And that's really the bottom line. Money, and to push an ideology and to set precedences so it's easier next time for the next innocence fraud campaign and to push through laws. And so many laws in New York have been pushed through, especially in Queens. One case comes to mind from the Marty Tankleff case, which it took me about 2 years to go through all the filings on and off in that case. And they set up conviction integrity units because of that case. And it's a total fraud. Andrew Cuomo reviewed the case when they had to overturn it on technicality. And he said, Marty Tankleff is not innocent, deserves no money. And what does Marty Tankleff do right after that? Sues everybody and wins a crazy amount of millions, multi-millions judgment. I think it was it 3.3? I think it was like something like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a lot. And he went on to be a lawyer, leading students in investigating wrongful convictions. So I don't trust anything, but the more interesting part of the filing is their affidavits. And now some analysts has said that maybe they're saying that this is their way of getting out of the case by saying we're witnesses now. But so much of their filing is like, a friend of a friend told me, I got this intermediary A hooked me up with intermediary B, and then they hooked me up with juror C. It's so crazy. But let me start with Alan Jackson, who last we saw was in a state of how do we say it? A candid state with Karen Reed, caught with his arms around her, with his hand cupping her breast in public. Hey, B-Tim. So Karen Reed has a new attorney, Martin Weinberg. I saw that. The same guy that represented Epstein. I didn't know that. Thank you. That's interesting. Thanks, B-Tim. With this dream team, all that is missing is the attorney from the Nuremberg trials to complete the sleaze team. Yeah, it is really one of the more sleazy, lying bunch of lawyers I've seen in a long time. Hildy, thanks so much. Your song should be published. It should be played in nightclubs and youth clubs all over the world. Thank you. Thank you for the $100 or 100 Norwegian. Thanks. Kathy Chapin, nice to see you. Thanks, Kathy. Nice to see you guys. So as I get into this, it is so bizarre, these filings. Hold on one second. Let me pull them up. So this is Alan Jackson. And Alan Jackson writes, I, Alan Jackson, declare, am a partner at the Los Angeles law firm of Worksman, Jackson, and Quinn, LLP, and I've been licensed to practice law since 1994. I am counsel for Karen Reed, appearing on her behalf in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. I was contacted by Juror A, true name and identity withheld to maintain anonymity. Based on my conversation with Juror A and that juror's description of who he, she is, where he, she was seated, and certain identifying information, name, occupation, disclosed during the voir dire process, I was able to positively identify which juror he, she was. Juror A told me that he, she was seeing inaccurate reports about the split among the jurors related to the mistrial that the court declared the day before. Strangely, they didn't want to reach out to the Commonwealth. They didn't want to reach out to the press. They just wanted to reach out to Karen Reed's attorney. Isn't that odd? Juror A stated that he, she, so they don't want to give their biological sex, wished to be respectful of the privacy of the deliberative process, but did wish to inform me of the true results of such process. Juror A indicated that he, she believes it is important to disclose, such results because, hold on one second, let me skip. because she believes that those results significantly impact Ms. Reed's rights, because they care so much about their rights because they were non-biased, guys. Juror A told me that the results of the deliberation was that the jury unanimously, agreed that Karen Reed is not guilty of count 1, second-degree murder. Juror A was emphatic. He or she was emphatic that count 1, second-degree murder was off the table, and that all of the 12 of the jurors were in agreement that she was not guilty of such crime. Juror A told me that shortly following, doesn't this sound like a gossip thing? And Juror A told me, it's like telephone. Shortly following the determination regarding count 1, the jury also unanimously agreed, that Karen Reed is not guilty of count 3, leaving the scene with injury, causing injury and death. When presented to the court, all the counsel were ordered to the courtroom. The note was not presented to counsel for review. Rather, the court indicated that the jury was at an impasse. Once the jury was seated, the court then read the jury note verbatim in open court, and without providing any opportunity for defense counsel to be heard, the court declared a mistrial and excused the jury. See, they wanted to just say this at the time, but now, the mistrial was declared too early, guys. Hold on one second. Can you believe that? It was too quick for Alan Jackson. Once the jury was seated, the court then read the jury. Neither Ms. Reed nor counsel consented to the entry of the mistrial. Oh, they didn't consent. Did you just see them celebrating? Defense counsel was denied the opportunity to request the court inquire on which count or counts the jury may have been deadlocked, including lesser offenses, on which count or counts the jury may have arrived at a verdict, nor did the court on its own inquire of the jury foreperson on which counts the jury was at an impasse and whether the jury could or did reach unanimous agreement on the other counts. Had the court so inquired, it appears clearly that not guilty verdicts would have been recorded for count 1 and 3. Ms. Reed was denied her right to receive those verdicts in her favor. And it's signed Alan Jackson, California. So, of course, he does it a little bit more to the point than David Yannetti. Does that shock anyone? And David Yannetti starts that he's an attorney, that he received communication from 2 different individuals. So informant B and informant C, who had received information from 2 distinct jurors, hereinafter Juror B and Juror C, both of whom were part of the deliberating jury in the case. So isn't it interesting that there's are they saying there were 3 jury holdouts for innocent and all these? And he says something interesting here. Maybe the lawyers can explain it to me. But he said they didn't consider count 1. Does that mean that they didn't consider it? That they didn't deliberate on it, or that all of them voted not guilty? I can't believe I'm taking this thing serious. I'm not taking it seriously. I just want to know what that means. Informant B and C do not know each other. Informant B sent me a screenshot she had received from someone herein intermediary B of text messages that intermediary B had received from Juror B. In that screenshot, Juror B texted the following to intermediary B: it was not guilty on second degree, and split in half for the second charge. When the juror sent us back with the Hernandez thing to look at the other side, it turned into a bully match. I thought the prosecution didn't prove their case. No one thought she hit him on purpose, or even thought she hit him on purpose. Sick. They gave us free counseling forms when we left. So they thought that maybe, I thought that was interesting. They thought maybe the Karen Reed jury was so traumatized by the whole experience that they maybe needed counseling. Based upon the first name of juror B given to me by informant B, I believe I am able to positively identify which juror he/she was and confirm that he/she was a deliberating juror. So this is like the more interesting part of, on July 3, informant C contacted me to say, see, everybody's calling David Unetti in Alan Jackson's office to say that he/she personally knew juror C as they used to work together. Informant C and juror C also have a mutual friend, intermediary C, who is currently co-worker and friend of juror C. Informant C told me that she had posted something about the Karen Reed case on Facebook on Monday, July 1st, 2024. She told me that she believes that post led intermediary C to text her, and inform her that juror C was a deliberating juror on the case. Informant C told me that she thereafter reached out to juror C via text message and discussed her experience as a juror in very general terms. They discussed what an exhausting experience it was, and that juror C was relieved that it was finally over. I don't know why that's necessary, but okay. And would be participating in a Zoom meeting with a number of friends to discuss what happened with the file. Informant C sent me these screenshots of text message exchange. See, it's like this whole thing was based on text messages. And isn't it funny that this is once again, intermediary C says no consideration for murder too. So does that mean they didn't consider it? Or that they just, I don't even know what that means. Manslaughter started polling at 6-6, then ended deadlocked 4 no, 8 yes. She was very consistent in the fact that they could only consider things that were admitted into evidence. Ultimately, she voted no because the cause of death was twofold of hypothermia and head injury, of which she was convinced that the vehicle did not cause both. So, oh yeah, the person wasn't injured by the person firing the gun. They were only injured by the bullet. So, come on. What great logic that juror has. The whole jury felt very intimidated by Higgins' presence at the end. She's not sure what she's going to do. Going to lay low for a couple days and see where it takes him. Hasn't ruled anything out. The jurors all have a group text going. Interesting. It was no consideration for murder too. Shouldn't she have been acquitted on that count and hung on the remaining charges? Goes back to a jury verdict. So that is so basically they're rallying up their base. This is what this means. They're rallying up their base, and they're trying to intimidate the Commonwealth to get them to drop the charges. And I've seen, I think JLR Investigates was tweeting that Karen Reed should make a deal, but I don't think Karen Reed will ever admit to any of this. And in the end, her innocence fraud campaign may be so strong that she may get another hung verdict. Just may cost her a hung jury, may cost her a whole heck of a lot. But I just don't ever see Karen Reed ever taking the reasonable way out and saying, oh, I'm gonna make a deal with the state. B. Tim says, why in God's green earth would AJ and Unetti embarrass themselves by publishing this? I don't know. I think it's just to rally the base. It worked in their early filings. I get it is to get press, but this makes them look desperate and incompetent. Interesting. I don't think the Free Karen Reed people agree. I think they think it's a great move, and they absolutely agree. And it's another injustice done to Karen Reed. And once again, Karen Reed's the victim, not John O'Keefe. And also what happened. So I thought it was fairly interesting. Also what happened this week was John O'Keefe's brother, Paul O'Keefe, who we saw sitting behind Karen Reed in the trial, gave a fantastic interview, and I wanted to go through it with you all. But this is how innocence fraud campaigns work. Where are the good lawyers out there? Why are there no good lawyers calling this kind of immoral, fraudulent behavior out? That's what I don't understand. Where are they? Because it's going to destroy your whole profession. And we're going to have nothing but kangaroo courts. Our legal system is already buckling under these innocence fraudsters. The weight of them, there's so many, and the movement is so strong and so rich. And no one's saying anything. It's bizarre. So I just wanted to share with you the interview with Paul O'Keefe. You may have seen it, but it's so worth a careful watch. So let's watch it together, shall we? Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, I skipped forward.
My first question is obvious. Just how are you doing? How's your family doing?
I mean, we're doing all right, hanging in there. It's been a long, painful 2.5 years. And I mean, with the mistrial that happened the other day, obviously it wasn't ideal, but if we have to do it again, we'll do it again. So we're ready to go.
Did you, prior to jury deliberations, ever think a mistrial was even possible?
I kept everything was on the table, I guess, but obviously hoping and confident that we were going to get the conviction that we were looking for. So as far as a mistrial, yes, it's something we didn't want, obviously, but it's just a bump in the road. And like I said, we'll do it again. We'll do it as many times as we have to.
And it seems like the Commonwealth is prepared to do it as many times as they have to. But why? My feeling is that they should move it out of Canton. And it's just too much of a free Karen Reed hotbed. And just the other thing is that 200-yard distance from the courthouse was not enough. They could still hear them, had to walk through them. Enough. I mean, you can still exercise your First Amendment rights, but do it far, far away from the courthouse. There's no place for that. Maybe the judge, second time round, will be stricter. And I'd be curious to see if less things come in second time around for the defense. That certainly was the case in the Menendez brothers trial. The defense had a lot of leeway first time around, and second time around when there was a hung jury, not so, they knew, the first time around when it was a hung jury, second time around, they did not as much stuff was going to come in for the defense. Curious if Judge Beverly Canone is going to go that way. But who expected a mistrial? I said anything was possible. But who goes in saying we're going to spend 8 weeks of our life and we think it's going to be a mistrial? No one thinks that. Not Karen Reed, not Paul O'Keefe, or the O'Keefe family.
You'll be back in court every day for another long trial.
Absolutely.
How are your parents?
They're doing all right. That's more of my concern, is that they have to go through this again. I mean, I'll do it 10 more times if I have to, but I hate the fact that they have to go through this all again. We don't know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. But I mean, overall, they're doing okay.
Mm-hmm. And they have John's kids now too, or your sister's kids.
Yeah. So they're living in my brother's house in Canton. raising my niece and nephew who were 16 and 13. I wanted them to come down here and live with us, but my niece didn't want to leave Canton, didn't want to leave her friends, didn't want to leave her house, and kind of hard to force a kid who's been through as much as they've been through to kind of shake up their world, for I guess a third time.
Yeah, I mean, can you just talk about Kaylee and Patrick? I mean, they, because we didn't put them on camera or anything, of course, during the trial, I had a lot of people ask me, like, what were they like? And they seemed like, for a reason, very, very strong kids.
They're great kids. They're strong kids. They're resilient kids. They have every excuse in the world not to be good kids. My niece Kaylee, super strong. When asked if she wanted to testify, we told them they didn't have to, and she said absolutely she wants to. She wanted her voice heard, her story heard. Wanted people to listen to her. She felt like because she was, 14 at the time, that no one wanted to listen to her. So she was strong and insisted on doing it. And my nephew was, he wanted to support her. So he said, if she does it, I'll do it. So I'm proud of them both for doing what they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that happened in the trial. It's just a juror for, we had the victim in that case was 16 years old, had to testify. What a horror thing to be put through. To have to tell a room full of strangers some of the worst moments, about the most intimate, worst moments of your life. And how strong are both of them to get through it. And then to have your audio leaked. I mean, it's kind of interesting to hear her say she wanted her voice to be heard, but did she want it to be heard that way? Through leaked audio? Because someone didn't turn off their audio when they were protected because of their age by the court?
Really strong when they got on the stand. It was amazing. Do you feel comfortable telling me, just from all that you've learned over the last 2.5 years, like what you think happened that night?
Oh, we know what happened. We know that Johnny and Karen were arguing. It was kind of towards the end of their relationship. Things weren't well. They were drinking and arguing and fighting, and in an intoxicated state of rage and jealousy, she just decided that she was going to do something about it, and put the car in reverse and ran him down and left him there to die. And we figured it out as soon as she left the house that day when she came over.
This gets really interesting about how they figured it out. But has anyone else heard that Karen Reed lit her other boyfriend's car on fire? I mean, that's a rumor going around. Does anybody know anything more about that? And you notice none of her ex-boyfriends are coming to support her, coming to the forefront. None of them are leading the Free Karen Reed movement. Like, no, she couldn't have done this. Isn't that interesting?
We didn't talk to any investigators, state police, nobody. My mother had said, do you think she has something to do with this? And I said, we're not going to think like that. Went outside to the driveway to look at her car, and her car was gone. It was a blizzard. I knew what the driving conditions were like coming from the hospital to Canton. And I knew that they were going back to Dighton, which is a much further drive. Mm-hmm. So we put it together pretty quickly.
I was going to ask you that next. So you took words out of my mouth. It was like, when did you realize? It was literally that morning.
Yeah. So I would say early afternoon when they came back to the house. She wanted to come over and see the kids. Didn't really interact with them at all. Was there for probably a total of 30 minutes. Didn't say much or anything. And half of her time was upstairs gathering her things. Then my wife spoke to her on the phone on their way back to Dighton. And she told my wife that just have to remember the bad times. And I don't think I'm ever going to talk to you guys again.
Was that phone call what made you sure of what had happened?
Absolutely, yeah. We already, like I said, we put the pieces together on our own, and that just really solidified it. Mm-hmm. Why would somebody say that? Why would someone say, if you didn't do anything, why would you say you're never going to talk to us again? Or why do you have to remember the bad times? Almost like justifying what she did.
Right. How would you have expected her to act in that situation if she hadn't done something?
Right. You would expect her to comfort the children that she spent so much time with and cared for, comfort the family, try to find out who did this, try to get to the bottom of it. But no, she just took off. Same thing Wendy Adelson did for all those Adelson supporters. And I find it so really disheartening to see so many people in that community jump aboard the Free Karen Reed bandwagon while all the time saying justice for Dan Markel, but no justice for John O'Keefe's family. It'd be a total waste to retry this again. No justice for that, but justice for Dan Markel, right? Give me a break. Give me a break. I mean, talk about just going where the money is. What a awful, it's very telling what their true motive is. And they wrap themselves in these hashtags, but they don't really mean it. They don't really care. It's about themselves and promoting themselves in their own career, legal or otherwise.
More sad, empathetic, sympathetic. But like I said, when she was at the house, she barely said a word. She wanted to be there for the kids. My nephew came home. My niece was already home by the time she got there and her family arrived. And I sat down, my nephew in the other room, she sat right next to him. I explained to him that JJ's, something happened and he's no longer with us. She didn't say a word. And right after that, she went upstairs and started gathering her belongings. And the next thing you know, they were gone.
Oh, my God. But yeah, it's hard. It's just strange behavior.
Very strange. Yep.
When did the whole narrative of her version of events become known to you?
Well, if you remember her first...
By the way, which is a behavior Wendy Adelson did, never talk to the Markels again. That's very sus, but in this case, it's not sus at all. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about this very telling fact. It doesn't mean everything. It's the totality of the evidence. But there's a lot of very telling facts. The fact that she didn't take off her shoes. She knew the rules of John O'Keefe's house because she knew those rules no longer applied. She never wanted to be near the family. I'll never talk to the O'Keefes again. I guess I better remember the bad times. Who talks like that? Psychopath talk. Who wouldn't be riddled, if they did do it, riddled with guilt? Instead, she plotted right away. She plotted the cover-up immediately. I think from the minute she hit him on, she was plotting all that night who she was going to collect, who would be her marks. And she picked Jennifer McCabe, right? And Carrie, and got them down there to see her, to discover him. It's like how people call 911 calls. It's not, they're reporting. I'm thinking of the staircase and that. You remember the 911 call? That has ridiculous 911 call where he's reporting and he gets very annoyed. She made sure she was never going to call 911. She never called 911. She had her marks do it for her, recording herself by the tire. She was plotting, planning. So don't tell me, this is somewhere where I really differ with a lot of the people on this side of the fence. I believe she hit him. I believe she hit him on purpose. I believe she meant to hurt and or kill him by leaving him there. And I think she plotted to get away with it right away. This is we like to put a happier face on really dark situations like this. But the cold hard truth of this story is in Karen Reed's psychopathy. You know, that's where the story lies. She wasn't that drunk. No one said she was that drunk. Police officers trained to look for drunk people. No one said she's so drunk. She doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know what she's saying. And her hysteria, you couldn't miss it. But boy, was that an act. She had to think of something, get her to the hospital, away from being interrogated. It was all very craftily plotted and planned, just the way her harassment campaign for the victim's family is carefully crafted and planned. And I hope that we see justice for John O'Keefe, but I'm not sure. This innocence fraud campaign, thanks to the media jumping on board, everybody's on board with it. There's such little good reporting going on this case. She could get away with it. Could be either another hung jury. They don't retry her. I hope Paul O'Keefe's right, and the state is willing to retry her as many times as it takes. I don't know. It's very easy for these free Karen Reed people to hop on a jury, even in these high profile cases. How much can you really know in voir dire about anyone?
Arraignment in Stoughton District Court.
Yeah.
Her attorney, David Unetti, had said this is a tragic accident. His client had no criminal intent.
Mm-hmm.
And then, fast forward to, I guess, when Alan Jackson came on board, and, they teamed up with a blogger to get their story that they concocted and put together and flooded out there. And people were only hearing one side of the story and coming to conclusions before actual evidence in the trial had actually begun. So a lot of the public was misinformed, because they were only getting one side of the story. And
thanks to our media, Paul O'Keefe gets it. He gets how an innocence fraud campaign goes. They get one side of the story, the media jumps in, and then even when they do hear the evidence, some people are so brainwashed by it, they can't hear it. They can't hear it. It doesn't go in their ears. They can't hear it. It doesn't matter how many people testify. She said, I hit him. Did I hit him? Is he dead? He got hit by a plow. They can't hear it. All they see is innocence. And that's something that I don't know. I don't know how you undo that. Monarch, Roberta, you have been missed. Thank you for your integrity. You're welcome, Monarch. Thank you. But I thought this interview was so strong from Paul O'Keefe, and I wished that the O'Keefe family had been talking earlier, but out of respect for the process, they didn't. But you're at a disadvantage when one side is giving, I think he says that they're giving media appearances on the courthouse steps, and the other side is staying quiet. So you only hear from one side. And it's really important. And the other thing is, it's really important that the victims' families talk. They're really a powerful voice, and that's why they're so targeted. Also, people with the most knowledge of the facts of the case are always going to be public enemy number one to an innocence fraud campaign, and have real knowledge of the case and can spread that knowledge, and also can get the media views. Will always be an enemy. And that's why the O'Keefe family was made an enemy right away. They knew this case. They knew about Karen Reed. They knew what happened right away. And they're a sober, very powerful voice when they do talk, the O'Keefe O'Keefe family, especially, Paul O'Keefe. I know that his mother has been quoted, I believe, during the trial, and all that's really, really powerful. But does that beat a nonstop, well-funded, I don't know, nonstop PR campaign? It can be pretty powerful, but you got to get out on front of it. And usually the family is so destroyed that a lot of them can't talk. They're too emotionally devastated.
We didn't come out and tell our side of the story, or what we thought or knew happened. We've kept a low profile and have been silent through this whole ordeal. But now it's time. Now it's time for people to understand the truth. And the jurors, we thank them. They did a great job. They put in a lot of hours, paid a lot of attention, worked hard. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come to, a consensus as far as a verdict goes. But, we have another chance at it. And, hopefully the jury that we get for the second time around will, we'll see things more clearly.
So just so I'm clear, you think this all started when Alan Jackson showed up, and Karen, throughout the course of this trial, you think she knows what she did?
She knows exactly what she did. And she's
Oh, Heisenberg, sorry. Heisenberg says, Roberta, it's now being alleged that these jurors are very upset about what's being reported recently. That sounds like the very opposite from what these lawyers are now saying in the media. Big surprise. So until one of them talks, we won't know. Or a bunch of them talk, right? But what an emotional trial to go through with and how even keeled the O'Keefes are coming off, or Paul O'Keefe is coming off as.
Trying to buy and lie her way out of this, refusing to take accountability for her actions. Not only that, but pointing the finger and blaming innocent people.
Yeah, talk to me about that. I mean, because the thing is, the story on the defensive side is not just, oh, she didn't do it. It's she didn't do it and all these other people did.
Yeah, I mean, she's pointing the finger at everybody. Everyone's lying except for her, according to her. I think we had 67 witnesses testify. 68, I'm sorry,
That's
testify. Right. And according to them, they're all lying and they're not credible. And, which, I mean, there's first responders.
Right, people with no motivation to lie. Why would they lie? It's very different. People have, I'm thinking of the McDonald trial where they had a woman ready to go take responsibility for, I think even with immunity. And she was like, I can't, once you're given that oath, I'm not saying people don't lie under oath, but it can weigh heavy. And for Karen Reed, for what? Because they all hate Karen Reed, all those first responders. It doesn't make sense. Make it make sense.
That were just doing their job that day. Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts, all they did was pick up the phone and help because she was asking for help. And according to them, the only one telling the truth is her.
Right. So I don't even know what to call them. We have a variety of names. The pink people. They turned on all those people first. Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe. But then how have they treated you guys over the course of the last year and a half?
Well, if you just go back to any video of us walking into court during pretrial hearings, yelling, screaming, calling us names. To this day, I don't know what I did wrong. I get messages all the time, whether through Facebook or other ways of communication, you know, telling me that I'm a moron, I'm stupid, need to open my eyes and all this stuff. But I ignore those. I don't really care what people say to me because this isn't about me. This is about my brother. And I like to think I know a little bit more of what's going on in the case than, you know, people that are just reading stuff on the internet. And there's been things said about me, accusations about me, all types of things that just aren't true. But again, I just brush it off because this isn't about me.
So if these people buy into this big...
Right. And can you imagine that? Your brother has just been murdered. And in addition to that, you have been made public enemy number one by Karen Reed. Karen Reed made all these people public enemy number one. The people didn't just decide on their own to go after Jen McCabe. They were following Aidan Carney, and this was all spearheaded by Karen Reed herself. Go back to my episode. Did Karen Reed? I think it was behind her own innocence fraud campaign. That episode. And I go through the entire documents. You can see how Karen Reed spearheaded this entire campaign. And she picked out who the villains were going to be, not her. She wasn't going to be the villain. It had to be everybody else. Everybody and all the people with the most knowledge of the case, the intimate knowledge of the case, and people who were a threat to her. And that's the way it still is. People who are the most powerful voices for the O'Keefe family are public enemy number one, are the most abused. Thinking specifically of Kate Peters because she's so powerful when she talks. It's one of the reasons why she's public enemy number one. And anyone like Jen McCabe or Kerry Roberts or the O'Keefe family with knowledge of the family, knowledge of Karen Reed's crime, they are going to be public enemy number one. And that's how an innocence fraud campaign works.
A conspiracy, right? That Brian Albert's a murderer or whoever. Okay. If I buy into that, why are they turning on you guys? Has that ever made sense to you?
Because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory that holds no merit, no evidence. I mean, we know these people. I mean, Jen McCabe has been a family friend of ours. She was friends with my sister. We've known her for over 10 years. She was very helpful with, picking Kaylee up to and fro when he took over raising the kids. Kerry Roberts, we've known for a very, very long time, right? And at the time, she didn't really know Jen McCabe or any of the McCabes or Alberts. And her testimony corroborated everything that Jen said. And the defense, I think, was scared of her and didn't even want to ask her any questions. They just wanted her off the stand. And I guess the negative or hate that's directed towards me, mostly me and my mother, is because we support these people who are being falsely accused of something they didn't do, right? And their lives have been turned upside down and partially ruined. You know, Colin Albert, who was a 17-year-old kid at the time, his life has been turned upside down and ruined. I've gotten to know the Alberts through all this, and they're all good people. So just because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory and we believe that Karen Reed is guilty of killing my brother, they take it on us.
So isn't it interesting too that these people talk about wrongful convictions and wrongful accusations, and they are the first to, and that that Karen Reed is being accused with no evidence. There's 68 witnesses for her. Something, right? And tons of physical evidence, testimony evidence, expert evidence. You can't say that there was no evidence when it took 8 weeks to present it. But they will convict in the court of public opinion. Jennifer McCabe, Colin Albert, on literally no evidence, on literally someone's meaning Karen Reed's imagination of what might have happened, even though it's totally improbable. And they'll talk about the heartbreak of wrongful convictions, but they want to see these people in prison, these innocent people in prison. And this is not unusual for innocence fraud campaigns. They will pick out, especially they like to go after grieving family members. West Memphis 3, they picked out one grieving stepfather, then they moved on to the next grieving stepfather. They'll pick out friends of the family, Marty Tankloff's case from minute one. And like I said, those are usually people with the most knowledge of the accused or the convicted, and the most knowledge of the inner working of the crime.
Doesn't it feel sometimes like your brother's forgotten in all of this?
Absolutely, all the time. It's turned into the Karen Reed show. You know, she walks through a crowd that cheers her on. She goes out in public, takes pictures, signs autographs. She's just living her life like nothing's ever happened. And meanwhile, my brother's been gone for almost 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And I just want people to go back to who the victim is in this. It's not her. It's my brother.
What do you want people to know about John? You call him Johnny. Kids call him JJ.
Yeah. I mean, my older brother. So, I mean, generous, loyal, sometimes a pain in the ass to me. Oh, I'm sorry, pain in the butt to me.
You can say pain in the ass.
You know, just because he was my older brother, but he just was there if you needed him. Took care of the people that he loved. Good-hearted guy who didn't deserve any of this. You know, he rearranged and uprooted his life. Went from a single the bachelor lifestyle living in Boston to moving into instant dad role. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's something that obviously everyone admires him the most for, and I do too. You know, it wasn't easy for him at the beginning, but you know, he learned to figure it out, and you know, we all helped as much as we could without getting in the way. Just an overall good guy.
And I assume he chose to.
Okay, so I'm just going to get through, because Katie Shia says, how do you explain Albert's and McCabe's deleting things and butt dialing so much, etc., especially Jen McCabe's, or the inverted video, you mean the Sally Port video, and other cop corruption? So I wouldn't call an inverted video of corruption, because it looks exactly the same way. It's a mirrored video, looks exactly the same way. Often security videos are mirrored to give you this, they give you a better perspective, a more true perspective. I think people butt dial things. If you said, I know my neighbor, I have a murder to report. Okay, well, what's your evidence? Well, they butt dialed that night, and they on the night of the murder, and they deleted some things on their phone, or they even upgraded their phone. They would laugh you out of the cop station. And what is the proof of a PR campaign? The proof is in all of Aidan Kearney's, in the affidavit for his case, in the affidavit for the possession of Karen Reed's phone. They asked for 2 of her phones. And you can go back to that episode. And how it was done. It was done originally through an intermediary, through Karen Reed to Aidan Kearney, where she leaked him information, first through an intermediary and then directly. And she's also been, the intermediary's also been interviewed. You can hear her interviews on Aidan Kearney's channel. Heisenberg says her lawyers didn't ask 2 big questions to every witness. They didn't like, who killed John O'Keefe? Why are you framing my client? I'm surprised the jury didn't notice that. Yeah, I think that this jury, the holdouts, in my opinion, were going to hold out no matter what was presented to them. This is some of the case with the, that's a really good point, Heisenberg, with some of the most evidence. And I'm shocked that it has as much this campaign, although I'm shocked at every innocence campaign I cover, that as many people get kind of brainwashed by it as they do.
To do that, right? I mean, your sister's situation is unimaginable.
Yeah, so then, well, after my brother-in-law passed away, we had to figure out, all right, what do we do? And at the time, my wife and I were like, all right, we'll take them in. At the time, we had a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. So we were trying to figure out how are we gonna do this? Our house was small. We didn't really want to live in the house that they both passed away in, but we were trying to figure it out the best way possible. And then Johnny just stepped up one day and just said, I got it.
Wow.
And then pretty much moved in the next day and took it from there for 8 years.
So there's a reason that's why so many people describe that that's what they admired about him.
Yeah. I mean, a selfless act, changing your life, to take care of his family and people he loved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's him in a nutshell.
I know I asked you how your mom's doing already or how your parents are doing, but I just can't imagine for her losing 2 kids.
Yeah.
Is she like a different person now?
She's a strong woman. I'll give her that. Yeah, it's unimaginable, just to lose them in the ways that she did. My sister suffering for 5.5 months with brain cancer.
Yeah.
But at least had the opportunity to say goodbye. And then, with my brother just being taken from us so quickly and senselessly, I know somehow she keeps it all together. My father, quiet, kind of keeps to himself. Mm-hmm. I mean, overall, what they've gone through it's unfair, unimaginable, but they're strong and they keep moving forward, and just same thing. They do what they have to do to take care of the family.
I have to ask.
So they lose 2 children. So first they lose their daughter, and Karen Reed knows this, then murders their son, and then makes them the enemy. Spearheads a campaign where they're booed going into court, screamed at, harassed, called names at the time when you need the most support. I mean, how heartless. This is why this campaign, this innocence fraud campaign, some other ones I can understand a little bit more. They're a little bit more of a, maybe I can understand it a little bit more as a difference of opinion, but this one is so, it takes on so much, and so many of them do take on the personality of the accused or the convicted. And this really takes on, this campaign takes on Karen Reed's personality. And it's so psychopathic and narcissistic and cruel and heartless. I I have a harder time forgiving people for jumping on this train than really a lot of the other innocence fraud campaigns. Although I would call those people out on those campaigns too, but this one really gets to me.
We got ushered out of the courtroom pretty quickly on Monday. You had a little exchange with Karen. Do you mind? What happened there?
So throughout the trial, she likes to turn and look at me and smirk. She's never once made eye contact with my wife, Erin. So when the mistrial was announced, she turned and looked right at Erin and gave her a smirk, and then went over and hugging and celebrating to some extent. And I just said, you're not done yet.
Did she say something back?
No, but I mean, it was an emotional day, emotional moment, being in that courtroom, sitting so closely, and that's something that she wanted.
Yeah, can you talk about that? I mean, the courtroom switch, we know all the legal reasons why it happened, but you guys were like arm's length from her for the entire trial.
Yep. I guess after a while, you just got used to it, but yeah, showing up every day, sitting that close to the person that took my brother away from us, it was not easy.
And Karen Reed gets off on that. This is the way Amanda Knox got off on talking about the Couture family. I'm going to go visit Meredith Couture's grave. These psychopaths love to taunt the victim's family and re-victimize the victim's family. This is not new. But Karen Reed is done so blatantly and so in your face. And the Couture family had to say, I want Amanda Knox nowhere near Meredith Couture's grave. Oh, I want to go to her grave. I want to, and eventually I think they did. And same thing happened here with John O'Keefe, with Karen Reed fans going to John O'Keefe's grave, if I'm remembering correctly. It's so wrong.
It took a lot to not say anything, but again, it wasn't about me. We were there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to get justice for Johnny.
What did Adam and Laura say to you guys afterwards? Like, what, looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, they were disappointed in the outcome, but Adam said, he goes, we're just going to do it again. He goes, I'll start tomorrow. So they're confident. They have the truth on their side. Unfortunately, if you pay high-powered attorneys enough and put enough lies out there, you start influencing people to the point where there's just no turning back. I think people just don't want to admit that they were wrong or duped. But they're confident, and we're going to go at it again.
He being Adam has been like, he's kept to himself a lot, similar to you guys over the course of this.
Yep.
Do you think that's been hard?
I'm sure it's been extremely hard on him. He's not the type that looks at social media or pays attention to any of that stuff. He just keeps his head down and does his job.
Good for him.
He's not the flashy attorney that wants to be on camera all the time and have press conferences on the stairs like some people. He's just a hardworking, I guess nose to the grindstone kind of guy, and just does his job. It's a very difficult job, but he's never once really complained about it, to us anyway.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard on him. I know it's hard on Laura. I know it's been hard on everyone who's been involved in this. But everyone's determined that we're just going to do it again.
Has your circle of like the people who support you guys, has it grown? Has it gotten smaller over the course of all the noise outside of this?
So for me personally, I've kept my circle smaller. People that we were friends with or haven't seen in a while, you just don't know where their mind's at.
Yeah.
What they believe. So we've been forced to become very kind of like defensive, not as outgoing as we normally would be. But I think recently we're gaining some more support. I think people have been afraid, to show up to court and I guess counter protest to the people that are outside. I think people have been in fear, but I think that's starting to turn. I think people want justice. They don't want this influence of, social media and public perception based off of lies to win or to take control of this.
Do you want people to show up with?
We'll take all the support we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we're not going to turn anybody away. I mean, every time we go to court, we're kind of portrayed as the bad guys.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's, we lost a loved one, but somehow we're still, I guess, vilified for just not believing in a crazy conspiracy.
Yeah. On that note,
It's not believing in a crazy conspiracy. It's having the knowledge of Karen Read and being a threat to Karen Read. Anyone who's a threat to Karen Read has been taken down and been a target of the mob.
was it hard for you at all? I mean, there were certainly some moments in the case where there were weak spots exposed, right? Like I think about the solo cups and Trooper Proctor, who.
I love this. What would you have done? What would you have done? Interviewer. I think her name is Krista. Am I wrong? What would you have done in a blizzard? How would that have changed anything if they got and how many times is blood taken from a scene like this? Usually my understanding is that they usually just swabbed it. But it's in snow, so a little hard to do. I don't know. They didn't have that. They had to improvise. It was a nor'easter. How would that have made the evidence different? In different paper bags? It's such a talking point. Oh, it's a weak spot. Really? What would you do? How is it weak? How would doing things differently change the outcome? Can't think of one thing. Oh, really?
Now is facing job consequences as a result of this. What was it like for you to listen to those moments that weren't necessarily benefiting the state's case?
Well, as far as at the very early stages, I mean, a crime scene during a blizzard can't be an easy thing to navigate. And yet, they found evidence, they found a sneaker, they found pieces of taillight, obviously you're not going to see everything under a couple feet of snow. Mm-hmm. So I think they improvised the best they could. Every investigation is going to be kind of scrutinized to some degree. But, they did what they had to do with what they had, and with the weather conditions being what they were. They just, like I said, had to improvise and do the best they could. As far as, Michael Proctor's comments, I mean, he even said too, they were unprofessional, which we agree with. But, this guy, his life's been ruined,
Right. Strangely, because Karen Read wanted his phone, which is how Alan Jackson works. It's how he got Kevin Spacey to never go to trial, his case in Rhode Island, never to go trial, asked for the victim's phone and was going to embarrass him with whatever he found on his phone. And so he used that same technique in this case, get their phone. He demanded everybody's phones so they could find embarrassing text messages and text messages about Karen Read that weren't flattering and ruined their life. But like I've said before, if I did this, I would expect to be described in similar ways. 65 CJ5 says, research high-functioning psychopaths. You will learn a lot about Karen Read and her attorneys. Dr. Kevin Dutton wrote a good book, The Wisdom of Psychopaths. Thanks. I will check that out. Heisenberg says, the allegations about some of the jurors becoming very upset changes everything. That puts in severe doubt into their motion to dismiss some charges. Yeah, their motion isn't going anywhere, guys. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's really to stir up the Free Karen readers and get them upset and make them feel like Karen Reid's rights have been violated, and that even going to trial again, which is just standard operating procedure, is a violation of her rights. If you think about the Menendez trial, the way the Menendez defense, although Leslie Abramson, who represented Eric Menendez, I know this is a while ago, but it's another really celebrated case that ended in a hung jury. The people who were on the Menendez, the defense side, meaning there were a lot of fans of the Menendez brothers and supporters of the Menendez brothers, and they really felt like they won something when they got a hung jury. But they were very easily convicted the second time around. It really benefits the state, a second trial. That's all I can say. So we're right at the end of this excellent interview with Paul O'Keefe. If you're just tuning in late.
Getting his personal cell phone, which was something that should never have happened. Josh Levy should never have been intervened in this. An FBI investigation was launched due to cherry-picked evidence.
Right, exactly. So just for those in the back, Paul O'Keefe saying exactly what I'm just saying. Sorry to cut him off. Let me go back just a second. Sorry, hold on one second. He's saying getting their cell phone, contacting Josh Levy through Karen Reid's father's contacts, starting a federal investigation. And all this was done to go on the offense and make all the people who were part of convicting Karen Reid the real criminals, the real trouble, the really corrupt people. And you'll hear people say that Proctor's messages were signs of corruption. They're signs of an emotional cop who had one of his fellow officers murdered in a heinous way, losing his head and getting upset and saying some inappropriate things to his friends on his private phone. But because he was working so dedicated and working so late into the evenings, he was on duty at the time he wrote them. That's why he's in trouble, and he's suspended without pay currently. And unfortunately, I fear he's going to be sacrificed to this innocence fraud movement.
Or pieces of discovery that was only provided by the defense. Like this is
pretty unprecedented.
To not even speak to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, to not speak to the Mass Police to see what they have for discovery and evidence. Just to intervene himself in that way, and which casted, a shadow of doubt on the investigation. So I think he has a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. Do you get updates on that?
I do not. I do plan on trying to sit down with him at some point.
Yeah.
Whether I got a knock on the door, I sent him an email, but I'm sure I won't get a response. But if I have to go knock on the door and ask for a sit down, that's what I'll do.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure people know?
In all this, I just want people to remember the actual victim. I think I mentioned it before that it's not the Karen Reid show.
Yeah.
This is about a good man whose life was taken way too soon and for selfish reasons, and has created a void in our life that was already an enormous void, but just made it even that much bigger. And I just want people to remember him and want him to get the justice he deserves and that we deserve. Mm-hmm. And that's Karen Reid going to prison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A great interview by Paul O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's brother. Very powerful. And I just wish he had been out there in the forefront talking earlier. I don't know if it would have made a difference, but so powerful. The victims' families' voices are always so powerful, and why they are so targeted in these campaigns. Do I have anything else for today? I think that's what I have for today. Like I said before, this is a joke. This filing, I mean, it's a joke legally. It's not a joke to the Free Karen readers. They're going to take it very seriously, but it's meant to hype them up, keep the momentum going, keep the campaign going, because the second time around of anything, except maybe The Godfather Part 2, is never as exciting. And the point is to keep up the campaign, keep up the hype, so that Karen Read is never convicted, that there will always be a Free Karen reader in the jury pool or waiting, ready to nullify the jury and make it a hung jury. Or even pull a whole bunch of people to their side and totally acquit her. That's the idea of having those kind of people on the jury. Didn't work in this case. It's interesting that they felt bullied, if any of those statements are true. But you have to have, from my experience, I've just gotten a lot of knowledge from just being on a jury with a holdout. And I really think that this holdout really thought that she would get on a jury and hold out. And once you're locked in as a juror, you're locked into this room, and you can only buzz when you want to come out. When you have like a message to the judge, or in our case, you want to see a piece of evidence or hear some testimony read back, and there's 2 bathrooms in there, and you're stuck in there until the end of, the day of court, till 6:00. Then you come back. In my case, 6:00. Then you come back the next day and do it all over again. Luckily, we were able to sort it out on the first day, but it was 4.5 hours of deliberation. It's one thing when you think you're going to do that, but to really, my neighbor was a holdout on a case. She told me a little bit more. I know I talked about my bestie girlfriend on a case, a substance case, a middleman in a substance, illicit substance trial. And she was one of 2 people holding out, and they worked on her for 4.5 days. So to do that, you really have to. And then she wore down and went not guilty. So, it's easy to say that you're going to nullify a jury, but the actual practice of it, either you have to be so pro Karen Read, and it's not good enough to just give those reasons like, I think she's innocent. You have to point to evidence. You have to explain your reasoning. You have to bring up testimony that convinced you of your position. And in this case, I just am so curious as to what went on with the holdouts. And it was very interesting that it was described as deeply held beliefs, that it came down to deeply held beliefs. Like, we can't move because it's really not evidence-based. Then it becomes on beliefs, right? That's the way I took it. But until we hear from a juror, it's anyone's real guess as to what really happened inside that jury room. So that's what I have for today. Please hit the like, subscribe to the channel, share this episode, and I'll be back tomorrow with another episode at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody.